um, to the Kennedy assassination. The government does this for very good reason. They don't just take out people and kill them off camera. They kill them on camera to create people fighting with each other's. Um, so um, um, be clear with the motives and so forth. Well, just think of Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm trying to give you a historical parallel. Think about how Lee Harvey Oswald is hired as a CIA sniper, and then use that and apply that to this situation, right? You know who Lee Harvey Oswald is, so you already have a kind of mental map or a mental template in your mind, right? Thank you very much for the compliments. Um, so, um, yeah, Grandma says he never touched a gun. Well, and we'll show you how this recruiting happens. It's sort of these wingman days that they're having at these National Guard armories and so forth. This is an AT-4 shoulder-fired rocket. This is only about a 15, 16-pound rocket made in Sweden. But the other things that you fire at the Navajo Indian Reservation, again, you can't fire these at school, right? People will say, hey, wait a minute, why are you firing a rocket at school? You need to go over to the Navajo Indian Reservation, and that's why we've got this uh, sort of like small passenger plane taking the kids to school. It's basically a school bus, and you fire these things at Navajo Indian Reservation. We'll show you the plane flights to Page, Arizona. We'll show you the way that you can get there from St. George on the highway. And again, I'm the guy specifically that finds this kid, right? I'm out there with the story at St. George before the father ever turns him in. The father knows that the gray Challenger is Dodge Challenger, brand new, $100,000. I think they paid cash. He knows it's sitting in the front driveway, and now he's going down, right? So they're looking at that and saying, "Hey, we got other kids in our family. Let's just turn the kid in right now." And you're going to see where the Lee Harvey Oswald nature of this is going to come out. Now, you don't have to believe that. You can think it's some kid who's got 99 percentile scores in all of these areas of math, science, and so forth. And then all of a sudden he decides to go into a Dixie Tech. He's over there at Dixie Tech learning how to wire up doorbells on Tech Ridge over in St. George. No, a Dixie Tech. I'm not saying Dixie Tech doesn't teach people how to wire doorbells. They do teach people how to wire doorbells. But if you look at the sophistication of the controllers and so forth, it's very obviously that's the mechanics part of a bomb making school. Now, I'm not saying that they're making bombs at Dixie Tech. I'm just saying they're teaching you how to do wiring at Dixie Tech. And that is one of the key things in mechanics training. Now, we said this was a mechanic is a CIA term for somebody who blows up bridges and stuff like that. So in order to blow up bridges, modern day bridges, which are reinforced with concrete and are very sophisticated in terms of if it's a military installation, it's reinforced concrete and so forth. You need people who have AP calculus, right? You need to calculate force waves. You need to calculate shock waves. You need to calculate tamping. How far do we drill in the explosives? You think it's an insignificant job. Oh, I'll just pack a whole bunch of tamping in there and I'll put a whole bunch of C4 in there like Peter Strzok does, and then the thing will go. No, this isn't this isn't For Whom the Bell Tolls anymore with Gary Cooper, just hitting the plunger and the bridge is blowing up. And I'll get into this, but this is not For Whom the Bell Tolls, right? This is the new sophisticated science of explosives. So we'll get into that in a second. So why the motorcycle? No, people are flying back and forth from Page, Arizona to go fire these things. You can't fire these things in Logan, Utah, right? So when you're going to the school, unless you know of a place that they fire the AT-4s, and you know of a place that they fire the javelins, which are about another anti-tank weapon, which is about 50 pounds, you're going to have to go to some place that's walled off. Now, I got to get a hat tip here to Gary Webb, because Gary Webb said all this in the 80s with the Cabazon Indian Reservation and the two other Indian reservations. Everybody loses that when he puts the dead man's slip into his shoe and says Indio's the secret where they're doing all this weapons testing, Michael Ranasciuto and all that. There's 2 other Indian reservations involved. So I give a little bit of a hat tip. We went out to Indio, as you know, in our last charrette. So I give a little bit of a hat tip here to Danny Casolaro, because I wasn't the first guy who thought of that they were using Indian reservations for this type of sophisticated weapons training. Danny Casolaro was. So we're going to go there. But has anybody talked to Charlie Kirk? We're both hit in the neck. Yeah. Well, the reason why you want to do a neck type things is because of the amount of blood. The brain is the biggest consumer of blood, of hemoglobin. About 30% of your body's oxygen needs to go to your brain. So that's why the blood pressure in the artery going to the brain is at the highest level of any other in your body other than the aorta. I mean, in terms of extremities, going to your hands or going to your legs or going to your brain, it's by far and away that is the biggest channel. So neck wound, especially a carotid artery wound where the blood is going toward the brain under high pressure, is going to create this massive fountain of blood, and that's the desired intended effect. Having Kennedy have his head blown off is the intended effect. But the Zapruder film was filmed deliberately, right, to show future politicians, hey, if we don't get a little bit of leeway and people don't work with us a little bit on this nuclear program, we have ways of, Robert Allen Hale and I.B. Haywell have a way of making your head explode, right? So that's the background here. Now, when you first, again, this is yesterday that we were told, again, we're in St. George the day before, okay, before the arrest. I just want to get that clear to people that this arrest probably does not happen unless the father knows there is pressure, right? Unless the father knows that the kid's going down, there's no reason to turn your son in, right? But if you think, hey, the challenger's in the front yard, and if somebody comes over and takes a picture of it, now I'm screwed. Now I'm not only going to jail, my wife's going to jail. My kids are not going to have parents for raising them. What the hell is going on here? So he turns the thing in, and so he turns the kid in. But what he didn't know, what the father I don't think know, and the father knew a lot about weapons, is what his brother was into. And we'll get into brother Mike here in a second. We believe this picture was taken at Wingman's Day in Logan, Utah, at Brother Mike's sort of this is a recruiting day that they had where they show them all the weapons and so forth. And this is where they recruit. Now, again, I had said, this is before the whole Robinson thing had come out, that this is a mechanic school in St. George. This is a mechanic school. This is firing weapons. This is demolition. This is the same thing Crooks is in. The same reason you go for Crooks and the same reason for BlackRock going for science and math is, again, the mechanic. This is the for whom the bell tolls model here. You have a whole bunch of partisans that want to fight against the, Generalissimo Franco or whoever, and you're trying to blow up trains and train bridges. You look at all the partisans who don't have AP calculus. No, you have one embed, a mechanic, they call it. You have one embed that does the explosives and takes the bridge down. The bridge blower is what Gary Cooper is in For Whom the Bell Tolls. Similar thing with Oswald, but Oswald didn't have the math. Oswald didn't have the math of this kid. The two kids that have the math, right? And the math is the hard part of this, right? The two kids that had the math are Crooks and this kid. That's why I think it's the same program, the same ROTC recruiting program. Now, everybody says this kid was learning to wire doorbells. After he gets a $32,000 full ride scholarship, he said, okay, I'm not going to go. He accepts the offer to Utah State, right? And then after a semester at Utah State in the engineering building, right? He's in the engineering trade. He's doing mechanical engineering. All of a sudden, he's going to drop out and go back home and learn how to wire doorbells at Dixie Tech. It's laughable in terms of the stories they come up with, but that's the story they came up with is, oh, he dropped out and went back to learn how to wire doorbells at Dixie Tech. No, there's a program here, right? And there is a front company here. I'm not saying Dixie Tech doesn't wire doorbells. They do teach how to wire doorbells, but they're the night crew. This is the same FBI guy that comes at me and tries to divert me from the uranium in Piketon, where they're teaching bomb making schools and so forth. Look at the videos and see what I'm talking about with the switches and so forth. It's right out of For Whom the Bell Tolls, only it's much more sophisticated than For Whom the Bell Tolls. It's really For Who the Bomb Tolls. Hemingway had a stylistic, poetic treatment to it, but it's really For Who the Bomb Tolls. The people who are going across the bridge when the guy hits the plunger are the ones that the bell is tolling for. So anyway, we'll get to that. But again, these are covert programs. Gary Webb talked about this and the difficulty. Danny Casolaro talked about this. When you're talking about covert programs, it's very difficult to get all the information. Everyone is against you. You have all of the intelligence services who do have these training programs. They recruit from the Air Forces, I believe, and the National Guard. This is a Army National Guard adjunct in Logan. This being Wingman Day for an Air Force base. I think it's Hill Air Force Base. But my point is that, here's Oswald as a Marine, but can speak Russian. That changes the name of the game, because even though he's not that great a student, even though he's not that great a sniper, he can speak Russian. So if you're going to try to embed somebody into Russia, right, do you go get somebody who can't speak a word of Russian, or you do get somebody who has pretty good skills in Russian? And it's just that simple. It's the skills required for the mission. It's the skills required for the mission. If I'm trying to give U2 secrets so that the U2 gets shot down, so that we then have a mass formation psychosis in America to build satellites, and I'm Richard Bissell building satellites, I send a guy over to Moscow to shoot down the U2. Just that simple. Well, we got to get the guy trained up in the U2. We got to get him trained up on the radar, right? And then we got to insert him into a place where they're trying to shoot U2s down, which is the Kramatorsk, where they have the SS, whatever they were, missiles to shoot it down. You got to know the flight path. You got to know the elevation that the spy planes are flying. You got to know when they're flying. You got to know the from airport and the to airport. There's technical information that you need to know in order to shoot the U2 down. And that's the person you put in there. There's technical information you need to know to drop the bridge. There's technical information you need to know to blow the revetment or the machine gun nest or the what have you, how to take down tanks, or taking down with the anti-aircraft gun that he's filmed at, how to take down planes or helicopters. So you have to have one pro from Dover with these partisan units, okay? And my point here is that you have to also look at the metadata around these things. You can't necessarily say, well, here, I'll just walk into the Navajo Indian reservation and I'll just film him firing the HE-4. I'll just film him firing the Javelin missile, and then everyone will go, "Oh my gosh, my whole impression of Tyler Robinson is wrong. I should have not said that. Now that I see he's doing all this stuff, bomb making and stuff, he does look like an operative being trained for Ukraine, a covert operative in an ROTC program for Ukraine. Gee, it's so obvious." Well, the only problem is you're not allowed to waltz in to a restricted area where they're firing these weapons and they're doing this kind of training, right? You're not allowed to go into Dixie Tech for the after hours, for the mechanics class and film it. So you have to work with metadata, unfortunately. And for people who think the government has already been proved to be lying, and I'll just go to this really quickly. The original story for the radicalization here, was that he was on a Discord server for Antifa, right? That story lasted less than 24 hours. Again, when somebody's caching weapons for you before an assassination, and when somebody's removing weapons, secreting weapons away after an assassination, that's a team. That's the secret team. His memory is not so bad. Right. His memory is not so bad that he goes, "Oh, you know what? I'll forget where I put the weapon, where I pre-positioned the weapon. I better go on to a Discord service with a whole bunch of people on Antifa and tell them that that's where they need to put the weapon there, where 20 different people on a Discord server is a group text, basically. I'll tell a whole bunch of people where I'm going to put the weapon before the shooting, right? Tell a whole bunch of people where I'm going to stash the weapon afterward, right? The Discord was, as of yesterday, right? Candace Owen finally tweeted out last night at about 10 o'clock that the Discord had said no. We've looked at all the messages you're saying were on Discord and how he was radicalized in Antifa, and none of it's there. This is why I say when news is very fast breaking, you think you know the story, and then less than 24 hours later, the story changes because they put forth a tissue paper. They don't think it through. They put because they've been caught on. They did not expect so quickly to be for the citizen journalists to be on the case in St. George. That's the thing that surprised them here. So when you're calling audibles, right, when you're trying to quickly come up with cover stories, you don't have the time to think it through that you might normally have. So the Discord server, everyone's saying, oh, this Discord server, he's meeting with a whole bunch of friends and about the weapons caching, the gun drop, and that's where he's getting the gun, and then he's going to have the Discord server for where he's going to get the gun removed. All that fell like a house of cards within 10 to 12 hours because Discord went through their logs and said there's no messaging about any gun caching here, not even in code, right? It was conversations his roommate had with somebody else that they were saying that were on Discord and nothing to do with him. What's going to end up happening, and I'm sorry to go with the metadata here, but what's going to end up happening is going to be exactly like Thomas Crooks. 3 different messaging services. If you're in 3 different theaters, if you're training in 3 different theories, you're going to have one encrypted messaging for going and doing your NATO training, wherever your NATO training is going to be. The Clackamas County shooter was in Hawaii. There's also the Clackamas County shooter also trained in Africa. That's where they're really going to do their wet work, is in Africa. And then you have a third one, which is going to be Ukraine. You've got a lot of encrypted messaging services. Now, here again, we said this in Butler. Get the encrypted messages, Cash Patel, and put all the encrypted messages out, at least the metadata, right? We now know he's using encrypted apps like Crooks was. And my point is, when you do these mercenary activities, it's sort of like a credit for college. The first 2 are training missions, but when you do your first live exercise, you get money. You get money for college. And you kill a Russian general with a long shot, or you take down a Russian bridge with a whole bunch of with a tank column going over it in Ukraine, you get $100K cash, right? Cash. They're not saying where it's coming from. That's why the drug business is so important, because that's where the cash goes, right? We never have to put it in a bank. It just ends up in you. Now, you're going to see when he buys his Dodge Challenger, I think he buys his Dodge Challenger completely with cash. Look and see where he bought the Dodge. You see him breakdancing. He breakdances better than Michael Jackson, right? This kid moonwalks better than Michael Jackson does. I've never seen a white kid dance like that. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to, as a Cherokee, I can comment about white people. I can comment about black people, right? I've never seen a white kid dance better than Michael Jackson. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to make a racial statement. I'm just saying this kid dances better than Michael Jackson. How does that happen? Right? It's when he's in a car showroom and when he's paying for his Challenger cash, right? I know he's in a Mercedes dealership. I don't know all the details of where he bought the car, but I'm just saying that's your other telltale. If you're learning how to wire doorbells over at Dixie Tech, tell me at what point, you've got our deluxe model where you have 7 different doorbells and the doorbell rings in 7 different parts of a large mansion. And that's our, platinum prize. Here's $100,000, right? Here's $100,000 for the 8-way doorbell that you just installed over at this mansion. Dixie Tech doesn't work like that, right? It doesn't. Crooks wouldn't. We had Hooper, Crooks, and Urich with 700,000 in one account, 500,000 in another account, 300,000 in another account. You don't accumulate that type of cash unless you're taking out a Russian general, right? You just don't. And it's again, people say, well, where are the receipts on all this? We know about the bank accounts. We've asked Cash Patel, put out the origination dates for the crooks bank accounts, put out the messaging around the encrypted messaging around the bank accounts. People want to know how their kids being radicalized. The story yesterday was he was on an Antifa, he was on an Antifa website, and Antifa radicalized him. That turned out to be false by the end of the day. Trainers, and this guy's not a CIA trainer. This was at the career day, wingman day. But my point is, in wingman is sort of, you need a guy who gets in behind the enemy lines and puts the laser on the target, and then here comes General Schwarzkopf's, planes or helicopters, and then they hit the laser. They call it paint the target, right? My point here is that there's a lot better chance he gets anti-Trump and pro-government in a training camp where he's being trained every day in, day out, with guys like this, mechanics that are teaching him the arts of explosives and the arts of. Now we said, now it would be great. Everybody said, well, if it was crooks, why isn't he going to the same Demolition Ranch training camp as crooks? Well, they closed Demolition Ranch down, right? Crooks Demolition Ranch was closed down by our investigation. So now either they moved it somewhere, or they said, no, we don't need people who know how to blow up bridges anymore. I don't know if that's what's at the Navajo Indian Reservation. People said, well, you're saying that there's CIA activities at the Indian reservations. Yes, I am saying there's CIA activities at the Indian reservations. I see where they've cut off my comments here. So we're getting into classified, obviously, because they've cut off all my comments. So the Creating Girl thing, again, these things are pot boilers. They're made for you to go out and say something racist. They're made for you to go out and say something that I don't even know if I'm still broadcasting. Tell me if I'm still broadcasting. I'm not seeing any feedback that I'm being successful broadcasting here. Looks like I'm dead in the water. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to say goodbye on this one. This is the general gist, and we'll leave it right here. I hope I'm still broadcasting, but it doesn't look like anything's going through. Sorry, I'm being shut down already. Oh, somebody said I'm live now, and could somebody just say I'm live in the YouTube? I don't know if my YouTube channel's been taken down or not. Let me look real quick to see if my YouTube channel's been taken down. Again, you get into the once you get into these kind of things, you're going to get shut down because it's they don't want people to know there's a covert program to train mechanics for Ukraine. I mean, that's the bottom line. So let's just see if I'm still broadcasting here. I'm not getting anything. It says I'm live, but it seems frozen. It seems frozen. Okay, well, that's the way it is, I guess. Maybe. All right. Well, that's disappointing. It's all Epi War. Maybe that's Peter Duke saying that. We're going to do a show with Peter Duke a little bit later this afternoon. I just would ask people. It looks like we're going to have to abort the broadcast here, but I would just ask people, when you first heard about Lee Harvey Oswald, did you know he worked at Atsugi Air Force Base? Did you know that James Angleton was his handler? Did you know that he was brought out and brought back in and put into a U2 photo interpretation spot? Did you know that he was hired at Jaeger's Stovall doing top secret U2 interpretation on October the 12th? 1962. Do you know that they discovered the photographs with the Russian missiles on October the 14th? Doesn't that seem like Angleton's bringing him into Stovall's to say, hey, here are the missiles. Here's the doctored photographs. Here are the missiles. Kennedy, you better not invade Cuba, right? Isn't that seem like they're obviously controlling the president's thinking by controlling what the president sees in terms of intelligence? And they can say, hey, it's a Russian spy. If they bring Oswald in to do that photo interpretation, they can say, hey, it's a Russian spy. They gave you that bad info, Mr. President, not the CIA. So they have plausible deniability with the story. I'm going to be on later with Peter Duke at 2:00. He's done a fantastic piece on Epi War, which is this whole this whole idea of reframing and the whole idea of telling a fake story. Hey, this kid was radicalized on Antifa with Discord. Oh, really? Show me that. Okay. You can already see the defense that's coming, right? This kid's lawyered up. This kid's already lawyered up. This kid is not going, oh, I'm guilty. I'm going to go ahead and cooperate with authorities. He's saying that's not me on that roof. That's the defense here. So now you got to think about that. How are you going to prove that this is the kid, right? With the Dodge Charger, unless you get to the gun drop, right? Hey, I went up to see Charlie Kirk. I'm a big fan of Charlie Kirk. I drove my Dodge Challenger up there. I don't know what everybody's making a big deal about. I, you know, hit my leg on a, that wasn't me walking with the gun stuffed down my pants. I don't know. You got the wrong guy, right? Somebody dressed like me, but that wasn't me. Right. So that's where they're going with the defense. So think about that. If this isn't solved, this kid walks for Charlie Kirk's murder. Right. If you don't get to the base and the bottom, this is why I say with Cash Patel, if you don't get to the messaging, if you don't get to the encrypted messaging and you fall for the Discord breadcrumb, you don't get the kid. Right. Because he's saying, hey, that's how are you saying that's me? It's 30, 40 feet away. You're taking the picture. That's not me, right? We had 20 people on the internet already say it's 20 different people, right? Unless you show that gun drop and organizing that through the encrypted communication, the kid walks. Let's go to some of the messages. I finally got some messages here, all of a sudden in one big rush. And so maybe it's because of the poor Wi-Fi. I've got really bad Wi-Fi here. So let's go. You're live. Okay. Still on X. Okay. Thank you. Albert Pike. Let's do a simultaneous sip before I get cut off here. I've got bad internet. Let's do a simultaneous sip for the big guy, 100% for the big guy, also for Scott Adams fighting cancer and all the other people fighting cancer, all the other people fighting autoimmune diseases that have been asymptotically growing, exponentially growing, all the people fighting autoimmune and immune function diseases. So folks are saying I'm live. I'm just getting these messages now. I was frozen there for a while. So thank you very much. Not frozen. Yeah, here are just to show people that I'm live. I'm going to just put all these up. So not frozen, keep going. I wasn't getting any of these messages for the last 10 minutes. So I appreciate everybody being here. Keep talking. Okay. You're live on YouTube. Okay. That's still great. Thank you very much. So going back to this idea, don't go. Okay. All right. I don't know how much longer. I'm in a shared area, so I don't know how much longer I got the room anyway, but device froze the chat. Okay. So there's usually happens when there's some kind of low bandwidth situation. So it could be the low bandwidth I've got in the shared area. So that's possible. I just want to make sure I get all these up so people know that this is live. Reload your chat. Oh, that was a good idea. I wish, it's catch 22. Okay. Sandy, Utah. Well, speaking of this whole situation, Logan, Utah, I spent some time in Logan because my sister was the police dispatcher in Logan for a while. And so I spent a summer in Salt Lake City. And I probably shouldn't have said that, but anyway, Logan was kind of a horse town. I remember where I stayed, it wasn't far from the police station, and I was with all these horses all day. That's all there was there. There was no community or anything. And now, if you go there, it's all animal testing. It's a BSL-3 lab. If you know the background of Logan, it's a BSL-3 lab. There's a huge CIA presence in Logan now, and this recruiting day, this wingman's day, happens in Logan. And basically the CIA's taken over, and it's all, again, right out of the Winburn handbook, all Chinese. And I hate to stereotype, but it's the Chinese women who don't mind working 18 hours a day staring at a microscope. These aren't girls that go party, right? These are girls that just stare into a microscope 18 hours a day, and they're doing all kinds of animal testing in Logan. So there's a massive change in Logan from a non-woke kind of, it's kind of a hick not hick, but kind of redneck. Where's my horse, Walt Garrison? Get a little pinch between your cheek and gum, and let's go shoot something. It was kind of one of those cowboy towns. It was a great cowboy town. I loved it. I rode a lot of horses there and everything. It was kind of like, oh, this is right out of John Wayne and Marlboro Man. But it's changed. Logan has changed. This whole milieu here is super woke now. They've got the trans shooters, the trans chip on shoulders. This is all changed in Logan. It's all with the CIA. It's all of this create perturbation. Again, Peter Duke's has written an incredible piece about this called Epi-War, which is the epistemological warfare. I love Epi-War because it's so much quicker, and it's like an EpiPen, just jab you with it and say, this kid, here he is with shooting all these shoulder fired rockets and machine guns and anti-tank weapons, anti-aircraft weapons. And everybody says, well, that's the Discord server on Antifa. Is it really? No. Is he a CIA trainer at the Discord servers? And again, I look to, I've heard nothing about Oswald for decades. Well, we'll change that right now. We talked about the Lacombe raid. So if you go straight across Lake Pontchartrain, you're right down there at Camp Street, where 544 Camp Street, where they're loading the little Ford Econoline vans with all this kind of war material. They're driving across Lake Pontchartrain, like a 25-mile levee, right, with the lake there. And they're going to this Lacombe training base, and they're blowing shit up. There's this exact same thing they're doing with Oswald, and Oswald's going over there. Danny Ferry, David Ferry and everybody loading up the Ford Econoline vans and doing all this stuff right in front of, you have Kevin Costner who comes out and goes, right with the pipe, he's playing Jim Garrison. He goes, what's right there? That's the FBI. And he gives it the 6 or 7 syllables. You see that one right over there with the pipe again? He's talking to his legal team. That's the CIA, right? He goes, well, like this was pipe. You see that building right there? That's the ONI, Office of Naval Intelligence, right? There's where they're loading the truck up, but you cannot fire these in that square there. A streetcar named Desire, going by. You can't fire these weapons where the streetcar named Desire trolley cars are going by. You got to go to the other side of Lake Pontchartrain. So he was in St. George. Everybody's saying, well, where is he firing these things in St. George? You got to drive down the road to Page, Utah at the entrance and get into the Navajo base in order to fire the weapons, right? So people, are wanting all the evidence to be in one spot. Just think about it for a second. Lee Harvey Oswald had to go across Lake Pontchartrain to Lacombe, right, to do his training, for his explosives training. You don't want to hear the explosions, as you're walking to court. You want to be doing it on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain. That's the same thing with the Navajo Indian reservation with this kid. Okay. So again, you don't need somebody who's in the 99th percentile in math, AP calculus, full ride scholarship to Utah State and Logan, full ride. All right. This is the valedictorian level. I published all this stuff as a matter of fact, I should go to the Substack now that I've got the live feedback. But we're talking about somebody who you would be proud of to have as a kid. And all of a sudden he's going to start wiring doorbells over at Dixie Tech. Just think about it for 2 minutes. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we're not going to go to Albert Pike right now. 1880s, not really quite relevant, but there you go. So we're going to get all the folks here and all their messages up. Thank you for smashing the like button. I appreciate that. You think, yes, and here's one thing, they're saying the Discord servers was to smash Christianity. And this is a little bit with Peter Duke with Epi-War, that if you have a strong faith, right? If you have a strong faith, 100% to the big guy, not 10%, Hunter, not 90% going to the hose and blow, not 90% going to the Russian girls in the hot tub, the Russian prostitutes in the hot tub, and 10% for God. No, that's not how it works. 100% to the big guy, right? We'll do a simultaneous sip. The problem with having a populace who is 100% for the big guy is they're a principled populace. They're going to fight for their values, right? They're going to, when they see this kind of incursion into their universities, these CIA sort of takeovers, with all this animal testing, with all these Chinese coming in, taking over all the animal testing? What could that be? Are we the next animals they're going to be testing on? Yes, right. That's happening here, right behind in the walls, just behind him is where all the BSL-4 lab is, with all the animal testing, with all the Chinese girls, right? So this is a milieu. It's not just one little event for, Wingman Day in 2017. This is him as a high school student. But once you get done doing these missions, you get those dead eyes. You get those, razor blade eyes that these killers get, where it jades you after a while. You kill you do operations where people die and you see the dead bodies. You don't have that. Hey, you don't have that bright, cheery expression and outlook. And as a matter of fact, this happened to Crooks as well. We went to Crooks's junior college and high school, and we talked to people, and again, another mechanical engineering major, where his demeanor, he had gotten very quiet. He got the razor blade eyes. He got very, very tactical in his social interactions. Didn't say a lot. Didn't want to do any giveaways. Went overseas, did his business, got the money, put it in his accounts, and then didn't say anything. Just kind of, yeah. We talked to a lot of people that he was at with shooting ranges. Did he talk much? Nope. Bangity, 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 bang. I'm out of here. Pistol training. We went to his pistol training place. Bangity, bangity, bang. Allegheny Arms. The long gun training. Bangity, bangity, bang. Hey, see you later. I'm not hanging around talking over beers, because he's involved in a covert program. So, but as far as killing Christians go, the idea here is Christians aren't being attacked because they don't believe. They just hate God, right? They're not attacking you to hate God. They're hating this epistemological warfare again. They're attacking your belief systems so that you won't fight for your belief systems. They're attacking what you believe in so that you won't stick up for what the status quo is. You won't fight for what you have, right? You'll give up the rocking chair at Cracker Barrel. You'll give up the Cracker Barrel. You'll give up talking with each other at restaurants. You'll give up, you're going to end up with QR code ordering everything. You're not going to socially gather. We're going to be the ones with the intelligence. We're going to have the Starlink. We're going to be able to cut the internet. We're going to be able to pocket you off and gather you for autonomous drone activity. That's the idea here. Okay. So it's not that they hate God. They hate people who believe in God, right? They hate the foundation that working 100% for the big guy gives you. That's the target here. So, so Albert Pike is a little bit going that direction, but we're not, it doesn't explain the current strategy as well as just saying what the current strategy is. I'm not dead yet, so don't worry about me. I'm doing all right. Let's see. Okay, and don't take this the wrong way, but if you keep going with the Albert Pike thing, I'm going to probably just hide the messages, okay? Because it's taking the thing off in the wrong direction, okay? I just said I gave due to what you're saying, which is the anti-Christian thing. But it's not a fundamental belief on, like, I'm a sadist or I'm a antichrist and I'm going to go attack religion. No, it's because you believe in your country. You believe in the Constitution. That's what's being attacked. It's the fundamental beliefs of the people that they have to kill, right? That's what's at play here. So keep going. All right. Well, I guess when I ask nice, it just doesn't work. So, all right. Candace had some point, if you haven't already. Yeah. I'd like to meet with her. She's meeting with Ian. We're a little bit off center on Israel. Everything you see at Gaza, I'm just saying it was a lot worse than the Holocaust. And so people just dismiss the Holocaust. Great Peter Duke did 52,000 stories of the Holocaust, the Shoah Institute. You have to, if you don't map that into your equation and with the Gaza thing, then you're not being even-handed. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to justify anything. I'm just saying you're not being even-handed. And I think Candace and Ian are young, and they haven't met survivors from Auschwitz, right? I have met many with the 6 digits on the arm, many. right? And when you hear their stories, it's visceral, right? When you do 52,000 stories of the Holocaust, like Peter Duke, 52,000 stories with a multimedia presentation, you tend to think about survival and survival of your tribe differently than when it's just, when it's just the last page of a very long book. It's easy to read the last page of the very long book and say, you know what the book's about. It requires reading the whole book to know what the whole book is about. Amazing. How the father had to scrub any connection with law enforcement. Yeah, I kind of went off on that a little bit yesterday, and I jumped a little bit emotionally because I found out that there was this connection. But again, um, don't worry about it with Frank. I just basically I warned people, and I said I'm going to zap your, you're going to go to the slip and slide. I think these people want to promote the Dundee slip and slide at our charrettes. I just think, well, let me take a ride down the slip and slide. Okay, yeah, if you want the ride down the slip and slide, you got it. Um, uh, let's see, I've got 3,600 watching. This probably was put up a little while ago, so okay, great. Again, we're going to talk about this more in depth about the attack of, what they're saying with Albert Pike and the attack on Christianity. This is Peter has written, and I listened to the podcast that was generated with Notebook LM, which is the AI dialogue creator of his work. It's just amazing. He does an incredible job. This is the best thing I think I've ever I've read from Peter, and I love the Elders of Zion book that he did too, the interpretive book on Elders of Zion. This is an amazing piece right here. If you haven't signed up for Peter Duke and the Epi Warfare that he just put out, uh, get it. So we'll have more time to talk about that. I'm not trying to push that theological or epistemological, your belief system and how hard will you fight for your belief system. I'm not trying to table that discussion because we wouldn't be sipping 100% to the big guy if we didn't think that was the foundational thing of why we fight, right? I wouldn't be sipping 100% to the big guy if I didn't think that was true. But people, what they want right now is the juice on Robinson. And you can't have that discussion at the same time. So we're going to have it at 2:00. So, and if you haven't read Peter Singh or listened to his Notebook LM, it's just amazing. So let's not sugarcoat it. Again, it is easy, right, to say Israel did it. Right? It's easy to say Israel did it because it doesn't require any proof. And you'll have a lot of people that will go, you know what, Israel did do it. Israel's done a lot of these things, 9/11, Richard Gage. I've engaged with Richard Gage. And there are a lot of actors from Israel that are involved. And again, we do Shoah Foundation. We did the Birth of Israel documentary. Nobody stronger supporter. But even we'll say Dov Zakheim. We say General Danny Rothschild. We say Feinberg. We say Rahm Emanuel with the biolabs in Faisalabad. We're the first people to call out the operatives. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I spent 5 years chasing her spy ring out of Congress. So Anthony Weiner with the Blackberries. So Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, with Hillary Clinton being as servitors to the Israeli lobby. So no one has more chops, more credibility, right, than the work we've done, right, with Israel, right? But that doesn't prove the case. If you go in and you say, you stand up and you go, well, my opening statements is, ladies and gentlemen, there's 9/11, Israel did it. There's all these false flags where Israel did it. This kid's obviously guilty. Israel did it. That's not going to get a conviction. That's not going to get a conviction. What you have to do in order to get a conviction is to show the gun drop. You have to show the pre-positioning of the gun, right? That shows planning, right? He's aggravated murder. He's been charged with aggravated murder, right? Aggravated murder sounds like two guys fighting in a bar, and that results in a knife and a stabbing. He's been charged with aggravated murder, not sort of what we call premeditation. Caching of the weapon, right, is premeditation. Finding him and getting the video of him going to that location and finding the video of somebody putting that weapon there at that location is going to be the case. Otherwise, he's going to say, hey, you're taking a picture of a guy with sunglasses. That's great. That's what you do. Now, there's a whole bunch of things I wrote in the piece yesterday about how could he just sail out of there and there's nobody. He's on the cameras. Here's the guy walking with the Mauser limp, right? He's on all the cameras coming to the event. So you could have easily seen it. Even Paul Blart sitting at a bunch of video screens could have said, oh, here's a guy with a Mauser limp. We should send over, I can't say where the dogs are from anymore. So we should send over somebody with a sniffing dog and just give him a quick sniff. If there's no gunpowder, you're fine. Go on up to the Losi Center. Go up and here's a lawn chair. You can be our lawn cop today. You can be our Paul Blart up there on the roof. Make sure you blow this whistle if you see anything that's weird. So, but again, this doesn't solve the crime. If you get up and say, well, the Jews did it, and therefore you should convict, people are going to go, what? How's that proof? Right. So we're not about just throwing things against the wall, spaghetti, and hopefully somebody sticks. We're going with the plane going to the Navajo Indian Reservation back and forth from these colleges. We're going to turning off the transponder, the ADS-B transponder, so that they can go dark for picking up people on the school bus. And if you think about it, as a government employee, I need to have proprietaries. I need to have I don't want to be flying a military jet into Utah State to pick him up, to take him down to demolition training for him to fire this weapon, right? I'd rather that be somebody who's got a cosmetics company, something that's not associated with military at all, right? You've heard of Mary Kay Cosmetics, right? You've heard of Amway. You've heard of some of these other multi-level marketing schemes. Have you ever heard of Unique? Have you ever heard of Unique? And it's the fastest growing corporation in America. That's another thing that it just doesn't make any sense. And he's always picking up guys that are in training for CIA explosives training, right? How are you going to sell any cosmetics that way? If you blow up somebody's boutique, you're not going to sell any cosmetics, right? If you blow up somebody's house, you're going to kill your person selling cosmetics. If you blow up somebody's face, they're not going to have any face to put cosmetics on. So nothing about Unique and nothing about the cover story. It's very unique as far as a company that has no customers being the fastest growing company in America, right? And this is why I say it's everything coming and going out of the Navajo Indian Reservation. Look at where the plane is going. Look at the metadata going to the reservation and between the colleges, and that tells you everything you need to know. It's guys like this that are getting on the plane, right? Being united. Sorry, I'm backwards. Being united with things like this, the AT-4, so they can fire them off. And in order for that to happen, you got to get the pilot, here, Larry Visosky over here. Sorry, I'm backwards. Got to get Larry Visosky to fly this kid to this weapon. That's pure, plain and simple. That's how it works. Okay. So that's what the plane is doing. The 888, the Dead Man's Hand, the Wild Bill Hickok plane. Joseph Smith and the Mormons share a doctrine. I wouldn't have went to St. George for the last, 2 or 3 years and saying this is where the mechanics are trained. Remember, we're saying that before the kid's arrested. We're the ones closing in on the kid and the family before Kash Patel. I just want to get that clear. When I was saying it's St. George and we're moving in on St. George, Kash Patel was saying we have no idea who it is. I'm just stating facts. When I put out that St. George video, Kash Patel was saying we have no idea who it is. Just stating facts. Okay. Video's down yesterday. Kash is scribbling notes. Well, I'll work with Kash. I'll work with Dan Bongino. The person who turned him in, this is the thing. You have to convince people that they're right. And he was right to be convinced. You have to be convinced that people are breathing down their neck and they're about ready to turn you in. So not only is your son going to jail, you're going to jail for harboring a fugitive, and your wife may be going to jail, right? And now how are you going to raise your other kids, right? Now you're thinking, hey, I should probably be coming forward here, right? I should probably be coming forward. Now they come up with a cockamamie scheme that they came through this preacher, and this preacher talked to another person, and then everybody talked about it. What ended up happening is they had a little powwow and said, hey, this whole program could go down. because these things are generational. This whole program could go down, right? We went through this with Crooks. Now Cash Patel's here. So Cash Patel has gotten out of the I'm going to believe everything like John F. Kennedy with all the U2 photographs coming in, right? He's gotten out of that, epistemological, as Peter would call it, the little screen. He's gotten away from the idea of the little screen where you just have stuff come in on your little screen. He's gotten through that and said, no, 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 no. I need to go out there in the field. That will change Cash Patel's world, right? Now we're in real danger. We got the FBI here, and this one guy on YouTube saying he should fill up Losi Center with 1,000 FBI agents. Now, if they fill up Losi Center with 1,000 FBI agents like Mississippi Burning, we're screwed. This program's screwed, right? We got to wall this thing off. We'll have Cox go forward and wall this thing off. We're talking about not only the shooter program going down and the mechanics program, but all the drug running that pays for it is going to go down. This whole shit is about ready to come down in a big way. We got to push this kid out, right? You got to push this kid out, offer up this kid, and then we'll just defend the hell out of it, saying it's not him walking down the street. We'll throw every resource into his acquittal as we possibly can. And that's what's happening right now. That's what's happening. Johnny Radcliffe, I'm sorry, brother. I love you to die for you. Johnny Radcliffe running the CIA. I'd die for you. But this is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is what is happening on your Indian reservation, Johnny. And Johnny, you need to get out of the office too, right? Bring Trey Gowdy with you. We got people shooting ATF, AT4s every time you turn around, and then Johnny Radcliffe going, yeah, Trey, you're right. I'm going to make a note of that. So this is what's happening in your CIA, Johnny. I'm just saying, you just got to get out. Danny Casolaro, hat tip to Danny Casolaro for saying the same kind of thing at Indio with the anthrax. Thank you in the 80s. Thanks, Danny Casolaro, for helping on this, because you kind of cracked the case. But Gary Webb also gets a hat tip here for saying this is how these things are done. They're done through private proprietaries, so it doesn't flow back on the military. $100,000 reward money. Dad turned him into the pastor. Yeah, well, there's $1 million if you know the guy who did the mortgage fraud, where he made the billions on the mortgage fraud. What was his name? Bakley. He cranked it to $1 million. So it's way beyond that. And this is the other thing, is what CIA does is they say, well, let's make him a cause celeb, right? We'll bring in all this money and we'll have all the Charlie Kirk money, right? So that's the flip side of this. Again, you never want to give $8 to a citizen journalist. You don't know where that's going to go. The $8 a month to the citizen journalist, George Webb, the Substack.com. I mean, that's too much money for a citizen journalist. So he might buy a new pair of shoes with that, So it's funny. Gun not found on him. Yeah, it's in the bag, actually. It's hard to see, but he's got the gun in the bag, and so he has to get rid of that gun at some point, right? There's got to be a drop point for the gun. Is it the same drop point of the pre-placement of the gun cache? We don't know. We don't know the answer to that yet. This is why I say that's got to be the focus of Cash Patel right now, right? Going back to Washington, that is not the thing to do. 1,000 people at the Losi Center, 1,000 agents at the Losi Center. They want you to say this is all figured out and go back to Washington. No, you want to be on that gun cache. That is the key to the case, to connecting him to those guns, right? Otherwise, you got a guy walking with sunglasses, okay? So the FBI has the Dodge Challenger. Yeah, no question about it. Hey, great. You showed how I drove up to watch Charlie Kirk. Well, okay, yeah, I like Charlie Kirk. I drove back. By having a separate person do the gun cache, right, and placing the thing there, I don't have any weapon in the car, right? There's no dog to scratch. I can't say who. So I'll just say there's no dog to scratch on the car and go, because the weapon was never in the car. Weapon's never in the car, right? So having the Challenger doesn't get you any farther, right? There's no forensics in the car. Is his DNA in the car? Yeah, sure, it's in the car. What difference does that make? So There you go. Rich buddy, I agree. Yeah, you may think he has a rich friend. They gave him 100,000. Wouldn't you want to run that down for the car? I don't know what a Challenger is, maybe 120,000. Wouldn't you want to run that lead down? How'd you get the car? Right? Who was with you? Let's pull the tapes. Your work isn't done here, Cash. Right now, you got a guy walking down the street, and you got a guy shooting him. A guy wears sunglasses. That's all you've got. So anybody who decides to wear sunglasses is a potential suspect, right? So Mitt Romney, Mormon Mafia. Andy Craig did a whole thing on the Mormon Mafia. John O'Loughlin interviewed him. I interviewed him at Washington Press Club. Mormon Mafia that's been around a long time. I've got a long-standing family thing where he shut down the first SUV factory and parted it out to China. Mitt Romney is the one, is speaking of that, where the pivot happens in Utah with the 2002 Olympics. That's when the CIA money came in. Remember the scandal where they were doing the honeypot scandal and they were doing the luring people with the bids. Remember when all that was happening with Mitt Romney? That's when Mitt Romney pivots Utah in 2002. I did block John Frank. He's gone. That's how far back I am on the messages. TMZ doorbell camera. There's two different people with backpacks. All the better. If I was running the op, I'd do that too. That's why I'm saying, Cash Patel, my answer to this is 1,000 agents in Losi Center. Make it so they can't run the university without knocking over a Fed. Look at the alternative. Okay. He gets away and you're going to have a national disconsolation, a national gasp, a national, oh my God, there is no justice in America, which is going to cause more despair, more overdoses, right? The way to do it is actually fill the skies with wingtips now, right? Get the evidence now, make it a conclusive case now, right? Don't walk away from the case now thinking it's a lone gunman, right? Once you do that, you lose the game, right? Then it's going to be, well, there's 3 or 4 different backpacks and there's 3 or 4 different guys walking. And how are you're picking on my client who's a AP calculus 99 percentile. He's minding his own business. He's, why are you picking on my client, right? That's what you're going to have unless you fill the Losi Center with 1,000 agents today. And look at the alternative. They're going to be back in Washington, sipping lattes on Pennsylvania Avenue. They didn't even stop the thing that was across the street, the killing, the Israeli folks across the street. They didn't stop that killing. Just one second.